This is our seventh and final press conference of the 2011 legislative session, and I just signed the official papers this morning so that we can adjourn on time tomorrow, although there always still is the specter of the possibility of an extended session or special session coming up. For those of you that covered either the House or the Senate yesterday, we had approximately 150 bills. Most of the attention, of course, was on the state budget. As you know, I was the only person in both houses to vote no on the budget. And I did so, as I had indicated, because the budget really, two things. The budget did not change direction, and so therefore we're going to continually fight these skirmishes of out of money, problems meeting the balancing portion, and even though this is a biannual budget to go to June 30th, 2013, I asked the question, what happens on July 1st, 2013, because we're going to have the same fiscal problems. You know that we've had deficits totaling more than $5 billion over the last 4 years, and we've just been scraping by. Now we're adding $600 million in new tax increases. So I was very concerned that the budget did not change direction at a time when we must, and at a time when other states facing the same problems are doing the same thing. I'm also not convinced that the budget is in balance right now. We're still looking over the numbers and adding them manually because there is no total that's been given. We did have a hard time getting some of the worksheet data this year. Our budget analyst, who's over here, Eric Luke. But even if the budget is balanced right now, I'm expecting more negative news from the Council of Revenues, which will meet again on May 26th. Our preliminary information from the tax department is that tax revenues, again, will have declined during the month of April. So we're not looking for a major recovery soon. And with some of the actions that we're taking yesterday, notably the suspension of exemptions for the airlines, the water carriers, subcontractors, sublessees, and all, we will expect to see two things happen. Immediate cutbacks in employment from these sectors, and secondly, the cost increases passed on to our already overburdened taxpayers and consumers. So the budget is larger than it was before, when everybody else, every single mom, every family, every small business has been actually cutting back. We have not cut back. We have cut into the increases that the governor had suggested in his executive budget. So as far as the budget, I think that we have major problems still ahead. I am enthusiastic that we were able to defeat major tax increases, additional tax increases this year, including, of course, the general excise tax, the pension tax, the liquor tax, the soda tax, the tobacco taxes, the streamlined internet tax making its seventh year debut here, and also some minor fees. However, we did see the exemptions suspended for both GET and also for personal income filers. The motor vehicle weight tax at the state level is going up, as it will at the county level. Also, the motor vehicle registration fee at the state level is going up. The rental car surcharge is going up. The court surcharge for indigents goes up. And so we have problems in that area. You know, we spent a lot of time this session on animal cruelty, on prostitution, on compassion, and marijuana. I think we should have had more focus on the economic issues. I said again yesterday, my biggest disappointment, single biggest disappointment, is that there was not one bill introduced during this session to improve our business and investment climate. And if we're talking about new revenues, new job creators and all that, then we must improve what is perceived outside of Hawaii as a hostile business climate. And there was no no attempt to do that. So I think that was really sad. I'm happy to see also that a number of the ban bills did not succeed. I do oppose all bans. I don't think that one size fits all. And I'm talking specifically about originally the plastic bag bill, which started out as a ban bill, then it had different amounts of money, deposits and so forth, the leaf blower bill and several others. Another big disappointment for me, and should be for parents, teachers, and students, was the education bill. I indicated yesterday I voted against that bill. I guess I'm the only one again that voted against that bill because with all the talk from Act 167 last year about increasing our instructional days back to where it was, increasing the instructional hours, what we did was we punted and we let the HSTA muscle and cyberbully the legislators into putting off getting back to where we were. 2 years for the elementary schools, 3 years for secondary education. And all of you know that the unions came forward and complained that it would take an extra $55 million a year, each year, to reinstate what we had before. No one checked their figures. I don't think their figures are accurate. In the time that we've got now, we'll try to check that. But no one raised an issue about that. And also in that bill is the issue about all of a sudden after 50 years we're asking, what is an instructional hour? How do we define that? That again was not an issue before until the union brought it up. And I want to make a clear distinction between the union itself and very good dedicated teachers. So while we went to the appointed school board, and I have very high hopes for our appointees and also for the appointees to the Board of Regents, they're still going to be smack up against the process and the fact that the unions control. Interesting that none of the collective bargaining bills separately actually passed, so negotiations will come about, but again, it's a question of where is the money. So basically, that's how the minority sees the legislative session. We made some positive inroads, but I think that was mostly in defining bad bills that were killed. Nothing really positive to move our state ahead. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions you might have.
I have a question about, I guess it wouldn't be an extended session unless something's decided by tomorrow.
Yes.
But a special session, so say the council comes out on the 26th, and we're still short, not
Sure.
only for the next 2 years, but for
The current
fiscal. What's the mechanics involved there? I mean, is it, you presume the very next week would be short?
I don't think, my personal opinion is I don't think that alone would would trip a special session. But there may be other things. As you also know, probably the Senate will go back into several special sessions because of gubernatorial nominees. For example, in the Tax Review Commission, there are 7 positions. The governor's only appointed 1 out of the 7.
But you don't see a full special session to deal with budget problems based on...
Well, not just based on the council revenues. However, if you have a substantial decline by them, substantial continuing decline of actual tax receipts, and other news, remember when we all got hit with Aloha Airlines and ATR and things like that? Yes, that could do it.
Because if there are any budget problems over the biennium, for the most part, those could be addressed in next year's.
That's correct. And in fact, that's what my colleagues say. That's the game plan right now. So it all depends on what kind of the significance of any major news.
You mentioned not adding up. You still haven't seen the numbers.
Yes.
Meaning your office can't get the worksheets from Land and Finance to see how the...
No, we've asked several times, and we could not get that. During my budget analyst and my staff have actually been working on the budget since January.
You're on Land.
That's correct. That's correct.
Calvin says that a lot of the money from the consumers are shifting from the general excise tax into the fuel tax, which goes to the highways. You see any concerns about that?
Well, as you know, the highway fund had been raided previously. We've got the worst roads in the country, according to the federal government. We all know that in all of our neighborhoods. And they've been raiding. They've continued to raid that. Even the surcharge for the rental cars. That was supposed to go to help pay for the new facility. That's going to go into the general fund. Everything's going into the general fund. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's hard to really look at those numbers and say, okay, here's the total, here's what we've got, and all of that. But I think they've been very cavalier with how those numbers have been thrown around.
It's interesting to me that you talk about how our spending is unsustainable.
Yes.
And we'll be right back here next legislative session and
Yes.
legislation session afterward. And Rep. Suki made the same point on the House side, but came to a completely different conclusion. Not that more spending was necessary, but that more steady stream of revenue was necessary. Can you comment on
Sure.
why?
Our problem is not revenue. Our problem has been spending, taxation, and debt. We continue to increase debt, and we continue to increase the ratio of debt service to the total budget. But it is a philosophy of the majority party and of the governor. That's all they know is taxing more people and redistributing what you have, rather than making a climate such that you're going to encourage new investment, new people to come here. People want to come to Hawaii. They want to do business here. They want to invest. But they can't do so because of the uncertainty of the political climate and the legislative climate. Even during the Lingle administration, this is not a partisan issue. Lingle said during her inauguration the open for business sign is on once again. But then we still had the same problems of taxation, of permitting, of bureaucracy, and all of that. So we send out mixed signals. We say one thing and do another. This session, however, we didn't do a darn thing, didn't even say anything about improving the business climate. So it's a difference in philosophy.
Senator Ross Baker said we're trying to operate a 21st century government with a 1965
Revenue stream. Yeah, she said that because the general excise tax, the last time it was raised, was 1965, except for the surcharge at the city and county of Honolulu, as we all know. And that money has continued to increase. That's why a 1% increase in GET would yield approximately $500 million or more. So it's a very effective tax increase. So that's not it. I would say that we're trying to operate a 21st century economy with a backward philosophy of taxing and spending and making it more difficult on your citizens.
But they're taxing the rich, right?
Well, if we look in the mirror, we find out that most of us have suddenly become rich. It's just like our real property. When we look at the assessment, all of a sudden we have a $600 million house, $800 million, because that's what the assessment is. But that doesn't mean that we're wealthy.
So
as a matter of fact, what was it? Moneyrates.com last week had put out a survey ranking all 50 states with the adjusted real rate of income and standard of living, and we ranked bottom of the list, number 50.
So are they in fact taxing the middle class?
Yes, absolutely. And, if it's not direct taxation, when you tax business, of course, business basically doesn't pay any taxes. They absorb it to the amount that they can. They pass on to the amount that they can. All you have to do is go to your grocery store, look at your electric bill, look at everything else that you've got, and you see that you're paying more. We talk about inflation. Technically and economically, we're talking about the money supply. But for everyday people, you're talking about the cost of goods and services. And interestingly, the cost of gasoline, the cost of food is excluded from those measures.
At the beginning of the session, President Shansui said, poor Sam Slom, the Lone Ranger, if he introduces any bills, he's going to have some of his Democratic colleagues, at least for them, make a motion to.
That was if there was a motion on the floor to do something. Actually, I didn't have any motions on the floor this year. All of my bills were introduced. Unfortunately, most of them never saw the light of day and didn't get hearings. However, that happens with some of my Democrat colleagues also. Good bills are not heard because it's the leadership and it's the committee chairs that get to decide what bills are going to go through hearing.
So what bill are you most disappointed you didn't even get through?
Well, I had several bills that... my hoary bat, our hoary bat. And by the way, the bat will be back. The bat will be back. Look, this bill sailed through the Hawaiian Affairs Committee. It had international recognition, thanks to our Julia Allen in this department here. One chairman, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, for whatever his reason, refused to even hear that bill. That's an example. That's not my biggest disappointment. My biggest disappointment had to do with bills that would have granted real tax relief, that would have provided for an infrastructure that allowed for investment, the bills that would have allowed for statewide initiative, referendum, recall, and term limits, those kinds of things. They weren't even heard. They weren't even discussed.
What about how do you feel about the pay raise, the cut up pay for the executive and legislative?
Well, of course, as you know, it was Bob Hogue and I who were the last two legislators that ever got to vote on a pay increase here, and we voted against it. I campaigned against the constitutional amendment setting up the salary commissions because it's a bad idea. They don't even have hearings, and all you get to do is vote no if the leadership brings that up. And if you vote no, it's no for the executive salaries, judicial salaries, and legislative. At the last minute, my understanding is, again, the House will agree to the Senate version, and they will stop the increase, which was due to expire, the sunset was due to expire June 30th. I think that we legislators and all of us in government should be an example for the rest of the people, and there's no way that we should be getting an increase or getting what was granted to us by the Salary Commission.
It looks like the House version is going to pass on the House side, or is that the Senate?
I'm not sure because I haven't seen it. Maybe you can enlighten me. That's what I thought. The House agreed. House agreed to the Senate version. So that's, it's better than nothing.
Sam, it's Colleen's birthday today. Hanabu's 60. She's 60 today. I found out.
Why she doesn't look it, and besides, today's 60 is yesterday's 59.
So true.
Yeah.
True. I wondered if you might compare how the session went under Shansetsui with President Colleen. Just not a lot.
Sure.
But anything that stand out in terms of his leadership and what happened under
Well, I think he did a remarkable job. A lot was made. He's the youngest Senate president. He's maybe the youngest Senate president in the country and all of that. I think he went out of his way to be fair to everybody, and that led to more interaction, more discussion. But this is the most unusual session that I've been through in 15 years now, and certainly even before that. Unusual in a number of ways. You may recall we started running early in the session. And it was kind of like conference committees because we had overlapping committees. We had a lot of stuff that we were doing. And then they started the gut and replace bills, which they usually reserve to the end of the session. As far as his leadership, I think it was fine. I think he did a good job, and I think he was fair. And he was very efficient in our crossover days. We got done earlier than we ever did before, as did the House. And so I think there was a more business-like approach at that point. I think under President Hanabusa, she was well organized. I think she kept everybody in tow. I think there was more independence and more autonomy this year. That's what I would say about that.
To that. Did
Yeah.
some senators, perhaps by their seniority, perhaps by other factors, able to maybe get more of what they wanted done, maybe had more push?
Yes, I would say definitely. I think that under past years, the majority had their plan. They had it before we went into session, and they just like lockstep moved down the road. There were several surprises this year, including probably the biggest surprise and biggest event took place in the Ways and Means Committee, where we voted to go against the Ways and Means chairman on the general excise tax bill. That's, as you know, relatively unheard of. And Shan was right there. He was watching those proceedings. And, of course, a Senate president, like Speaker of the House, has a great deal of power. They can exercise that power. He chose to let the individual senators do what they were going to do. I think, as I had said at a previous press conference, the Hawaiian Affairs Committee was much better organized and more powerful this time than ever in the state's history. And they had hearings, and they had issues, and they had arguments that probably you would not have seen before. Well, you didn't see before.
Malama Solomon and Donna Videla Cruz were gambling, I suppose.
Yes. Well, and Malama, it's really funny. Malama was my seatmate in back of me, and she kept a running commentary during each legislative session so that I would know what was going on. She kept talking. And I like Senator Solomon. Some of you may recall when I was first elected in '96, the '97 session, there were two of us, Senator Whitney Anderson and myself, and I formed a coalition with the then 8 dissident Democrats, which included Malama and Randy Awasi. So we worked together on those things of common interest. She was saying things are really different now than they were before, but that wasn't because of the leadership necessarily of the Senate President. Some of the procedural things that were in place 15 years ago have been changed this year. I think mostly for the good. I think there's more openness, not total, but more openness, more transparency, and I think individuals have an easier way to contact their legislators, come down to hearings and everything else.
So every time you rise in opposition, you put up a good fight, I guess.
Well, I don't know about that, and let me say that, my libertarian friends would have me rise on every bill. I try to be judicious about it, and in fact, some bills I just vote no. I don't say anything. I'm not looking to monopolize. What I am looking to do, our staff works really hard in digesting those bills. We do a fiscal check. We do a legal check. We do a rationality check. Are there any things in those bills? In fact, we found errors in the bills which we pointed out very quietly to the majority party that they might want to correct. We're not there to play gotcha. We're not there to grandstand, but we are there to argue if there are defects in that bill or unintended consequences, or if we see that down the road it's going to do this and this. So that's why I speak. What I said yesterday was I may be the lone voice in the Senate. Most of the votes, in fact, are 24-1. But I'm not the lone voice when it comes to the community. I'm representing a wide and broad cross-section. I, like my colleagues, get a lot of emails, phone calls, faxes, messages telling them, why don't you do this? Why don't you listen to me? Why, we saw that early on with the ethics bill, and we saw it with the salary bill. We see it with the employees' retirement system and taxes and the budget. So I know what I'm here for. I know my function, and it is truly representation. And I think two unusual things. One, I've shared with you before, I'm on all the committees. I'll be sitting in a committee hearing, and somebody comes running in and asks for me to come next door to meet the quorum. And I'm saying, wait a minute, where are my 24 colleagues? Why do they need me for a quorum? And it was true all during the session. And the other thing is I'll make a floor speech, and somebody will come up to me afterwards and they'll say, boy, that was really great. I didn't understand that. I didn't know that. That was really terrific. And I said, well, then why did you vote for it? Well, and we all know. By the way, one of those bills yesterday was interesting. It was the Dante's Inferno special purpose revenue bond bill for the carbon outfit. And I read direct commentary from the head of the patent office over at the University of Hawaii, and there's a serious issue about patent infringement by this company. There's a serious issue about the technology itself. They want $40 million. What was the vote? 24-1. Why? Because it's backed by by the head of the Democratic Party. So I'm not afraid. Some of my colleagues and even some of my supporters say, boy, that takes a lot of courage for you to stand up or do that. I'm doing what I think is right, and I try to be consistent. Even on the Native Hawaiian bill yesterday, which garnered a lot of discussion, we're still locked in 1893. And as I said, I have respect for the speakers. I certainly have respect for Native Hawaiian people and for their rights. What I don't like is this is an end run around the failed Akaka bill congressionally. And what I said and what 3 speakers after me said, this is just the beginning. We're going to ask for more and more and more, and that's the point. And lots of times legislation seems innocuous enough or just on a single small subject, but as we research it and we spend the time doing it, we find out it's really a lot more, and so we try to share that information. So my main point is, later on, nobody is going to be able to say, oh, is that what that meant? Nobody said anything about that. It's in these books right here, and that's it. Whether they choose to accept it for whatever reason or not, that's fine.
But isn't it the same with taxes? I mean, it's just the start of
Yeah, there you have a different philosophy, though. I mean, you have a group of people, locally and nationally, that believe we've got to tax the rich, people are not paying their fair share, we've got to equalize the suffering and all of that, and it's the job of government to determine how much a person makes, who gets hired, where the money goes, this and that. So that's a clear definition and a distinction in philosophy. That's a little bit different. Anyone else? If not, again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for all that all of you have done during the legislative session. I think I can say honestly, I've been very critical over the years with the diminished repartage during the legislative session, but I think there was more of it this year, and I think it's having an impact on the public because they are more concerned, they are more involved than they had been before. So, thank you again. If you need anything else, we're going to continue during the interim. We're working on budget analysis and several bills. We will have a legislation prepared for January of next year. So thanks again. Have a great day. Aloha.
I'm also doing a story on the sine die and,
Oh, yeah.
how important.
You all know we're going into session 10:30 tomorrow. It's been changed.
Okay. Yeah, and I talked to a lot of lawmakers.